Welcome into the Thunder Basketball Universe presented by Summer Moon Coffee. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, we've got basketball in June. Can you believe it?
Amazing.
The Thunder defeated the Minnesota Timberwolves in 5 games, becoming your 2025 Western Conference champions for the second time in Thunder history, and now advancing to the NBA Finals. What a series. What an accomplishment for this team. And Nick, you've been around much longer than I have. You can probably put into context just what this means.
Unbelievably special for this group of players, for this organization, for the people in this city.
Yeah.
The environment that's been created here in Oklahoma City, the environment that exists inside of the walls of the Thunder Ion, it allows for success to happen. And these coaches, these players, the staff, they've seized on that momentum that's created here in the city and created within the walls of the organization. And they've taken their moment and they've taken that opportunity and done the most with it that they can possibly do to vault them to this position here to, in a few days, hopefully raise a second banner next to the previous one in 2012. That was my first year with the team.
Wow.
It was 2011, 2012. And so it's really, fascinating for me to watch all of the people that are still in this organization that were here in 2012 and the consistency, the continuity, the camaraderie that has existed despite the ups and downs that come with the life cycle of NBA franchises, to maintain the faith, to maintain the core values of this place throughout it all. I mean, you still see community and teamwork and togetherness. All of those hallmarks of what existed in 2012 are still here today. And it's so cool to see this group now get their opportunity next week.
The fruits of their labor certainly showing up right now. And I'll tell you what was the most special moment for me. And, this is my 6th season with the Thunder. I joined in 2019. I have seen this trajectory year by year on this second mountain, as Sam Presti puts it. Sitting up at the top of the 100 level and seeing that trophy ceremony where Lisa Salters hands over the Oscar Robertson trophy to Clay Bennett, who hoists it at center court, and seeing everybody on that court wearing that hat, that finals hat, wearing that T-shirt, and then Shai Gilgeous-Alexander receiving that Magic Johnson Western Conference Finals MVP trophy. So cool to see in person, while also everybody inside of that building, the best fans in the world, all still standing for that trophy ceremony. They had been standing for 30 minutes before tip-off. It's like everyone in this building is so locked in, keyed in, and relishing in this moment.
And it's just remarkable that, your first year, the Thunder goes to the playoffs, play a 7-game series, just not quite enough. But, they're in the playoffs, and that was, consecutive years in a row that the Thunder had made the playoffs. At least I think 5 or 6 straight years that the team had made the playoffs to that point. Then 2 years of being out of postseason play. That's it. Just 2 years.
Just two.
And then we get jumps and wins of double-digit jumps and wins for 3 straight seasons basically after that. Incredibly remarkable that this team has been able to make the strides and the leaps that they have. I think it was plus 16 wins, then plus 17 wins, then plus 11 wins in back-to-back-to-back seasons. I mean, no one does that.
It only happens when you have compounding growth year over year, and you have consistency. You have guys who are locked in, and a guy like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who came in the same year that I joined the Thunder. And what have we seen from SGA year over year? Just relentless and consistent improvement. And every single player that has been with this organization, we've seen that level of growth and improvement from them, to the point now where they are now heading to the NBA Finals. How exciting. It's so cool to see the reactions of everyone around the city. Nick, I don't know about your phone, but my phone was blowing up from all of my family and friends of just like, oh my gosh, so cool, go Thunder. I mean, I'm talking family members that I haven't heard from for years, who are like, oh, Thunder, would you look at that?
I'm sure, just like me, there's been some family members that I've never heard of before that are trying to get tickets to games 1 and 2. Like, I don't know you. Yeah.
Sorry, I don't know if I could help you there. But it's just been so cool to see the reaction around the city and beyond the city. Yeah. All eyes on Oklahoma City. And it is truly, truly deserved. Okay, let's take a moment now. Let's bring it back to this past week and talk about our Summer Moon stats of the week, Nick, because I feel like between, this series, Game 5 in itself, there are a lot of potential stats that we could go with. So what's yours?
Mine is 9. The number 9.
You're really not making this easy on me, are you?
No, you could go a lot of different directions.
Like, legitimately. Okay. Can you narrow it down?
It's not someone's jersey number, if you were thinking about just this being the Alex Caruso segment.
I would not hate that. No complaints there. 9. Is this the number of turnovers by the Timberwolves in the second quarter?
I think that was actually 10.
Oh, dang it.
But this is the number of points that the Thunder allowed in the first quarter of Game 5.
Oh, I should have known
26-9 was the score after the first quarter of Game 5. And if you just think about the way to set a tone in a closeout game at home, the defensive effort and focus that this Thunder team had from the very outset of that game, coming off a pretty gnarly 2 games out in Minnesota, one where in Game 3 the Thunder just didn't have it the way that they needed to, and Minnesota was firing on all cylinders. And then, Game 4, which was anybody's game, but the Thunder made enough plays down the stretch to win that game. They had an answer to every Minnesota run. You'd think, okay, look, those were 2 very different games than the ones that we saw back here in Oklahoma City in Games 1 and 2. Who knows what might happen in a Game 5? The Thunder from the very outset of Game 5 did not leave any doubt about who was going to have it that night, and they never let Minnesota off the mat.
We heard from Coach Dagnall after Game 4 in Minnesota. He said, our offense won us this game because Minnesota, they had it offensively as well. We didn't really slow them down much. We just really kind of outscored them down the stretch and out-executed them when we needed to. In Game 5, the Thunder's defense set the tone of this game, and that's on par with what we've seen from Oklahoma City all season long. And it wasn't necessarily loud in turnovers for Minnesota. It would get loud for Minnesota in turnovers kind of in the second quarter, as we talked about. But it was just in how rushed Minnesota kind of and disjointed they looked in trying to generate good looks. They were only getting one look typically on offense. And so for Oklahoma City, the defense was just a matter of not making it easy versus just taking the ball away from them at that point, which is what we're used to seeing from OKC. We talk about deflections and turnovers and all of those things. But in the first quarter, it was just like, you're not getting an easy look. You might get one off, but it's not going to be a good one. And you're going to have to work for it.
And unlike in Games 3 and 4, those shots that the Thunder was willing to live with to some degree, they didn't go down for Minnesota.
Right.
And what you do as a Thunder, you continue to just disrupt rhythm and disrupt the natural flow of offense. And what we've seen over the course of these playoffs is that more nights than not, if you hold on to the ball, if you're slow in your decision making, if you pause for even a brief second, the Thunder is coming and getting that ball.
Yep.
And we saw 14 steals by the Thunder in Game 5, 21 turnovers forced. And I like that ratio there, by the way, because the steals numbers most often lead to runouts and fast breaks, right? Forcing turnovers is wonderful. Some of those being dead ball, that gives you a little bit less momentum going the other direction. But OKC, we've talked about this defense to offense rhythm that it seems like they uniquely are able to create. And once again, that's exactly what we saw in the first quarter of that game. Game 5 was defense to offense flow, just turnovers to runouts, missed shots to runouts. I think Minnesota started the game 1 of 11 from the field.
They did.
And all of those long rebounds, the vast majority of them ended up going OKC's way, and the Thunder was able to flow into some offense.
A missed shot basically can be a turnover in Oklahoma City's eyes because those long rebounds, those, Alex Caruso coming in and just like grabbing the ball and taking it full court, and then all of a sudden everyone's out on the run. Like, missed shots can turn into runouts for Oklahoma City, and we saw that a lot in that game. One of my favorite stats, and was my contender for stat of the week, was at halftime, the Timberwolves had more turnovers than they had field goals.
Yep.
They had 14 turnovers. They had 12 made field goals. And that was just like the perfect illustration of how OKC was playing defensively in that game. Meanwhile, they had it offensively and they were humming on all cylinders.
Yeah. And, the Thunder just once again got excellent performances from the main offensive engines. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander with 34 points on 25 shots.
Yep.
J-Dub, 19 points on 14 shots. Chet Holmgren, 22 points on 13 shots.
Great stuff.
Those three guys combined for 95 points in the Game 4 victory up in Minnesota. Their services were not required very much in the fourth quarter of Game 5.
Yeah.
They still combined for 75 points on extremely efficient shooting. And what that allows is for guys like Lou Dort to cash 4 threes, including some big ones in the second half that just sort of put the game away for good. Alex Caruso, Cason Wallace, they were able to get involved as well. And so you're just the efficiency with which those three top scorers play with, that allows for everybody else to feed and get into a rhythm too. I think the play that maybe encapsulated what the Thunder wants to be about, end of the first quarter, clock winding down, Thunder's going up against a zone that Minnesota started to play late in that first quarter because they just couldn't get any momentum. Shai assesses, analyzes where the help is going to come from, finds that little gap in the defense, actually waits patiently for the defender to come over, then flips the ball out, gets it to Cason Wallace in the corner for 3.
Yep.
Cason knocks it down to beat the first quarter buzzer. That was premeditated, and it's premeditated, but totally fluid, right? Like there's a rhythm to the way that the Thunder plays, and Shai has now figured out how to actually dictate that rhythm to what he desires on each possession.
Yeah, I mean, on all facets of this game, it was OKC's game. Yep. And I feel like in a lot of ways, that 3 from Cason at the buzzer was like, okay. Yep, this is it. This feels just about right for Oklahoma City.
Because, in some of these games, like for every NBA team in the playoffs, role players, shots are going to go in, shots are going to go out. When they're getting catch and shoot looks, you just don't know what it's going to look like. It feels like when the Thunder's role players, and even, Shai and J-Dub and Chet, when those 3-point shots start going down, in addition to the Thunder's ability to get into the paint, the ability to score down low, to score out in transition, when those shots start going down too, it's a whole different level that this Thunder team can hit.
Couldn't agree more. All right, let's get to my stat.
Yeah.
You made it difficult on me. I'm going to make it difficult on you. My stat is 4.
All right. Can I do like rapid fire guessing here?
You could. It could be a lot of different things.
Yeah. Number of games that the Thunder won in the Western Conference Finals.
That is accurate, but not what I'm referring to.
Number of games the Thunder has to win in the NBA Finals.
That is accurate, but not what I'm referring to.
Number of quarters in an NBA game.
Okay. I mean, this could truly be so many things. It could be the number of steals Alex Caruso had in Game 5, which is also 4. It could also be the number of shots that Isaiah Joe made without missing in Game 5. That is also 4. But unfortunately, not what I'm referring to. What I am talking about is the number of games in this postseason that the Thunder has won by 30 or more points, which is the most in NBA history.
Amazing. Yeah.
That in itself worth talking about. But here's where this really stands out to me, because we've seen the Thunder throughout this regular season, all of their double-digit victories, which was more than any other team in the NBA. We saw their, ability to blow teams out by 30 points, all of those things. In the playoffs, things just naturally tighten up.
Yeah.
Right? The margins just become smaller. Things become more difficult to accomplish. And you just don't see blowouts like this. Much less blowouts in closeout games.
Yeah.
And the Thunder's had 2 of their 4 30-point victories in closeout games. Game 7 against the Denver Nuggets, which, that is about as high stakes as it gets, a Game 7. And it's the most nerve-wracking, the highest intensity environment that you can be in. And the Thunder won by 32 in that game, I believe.
Yeah, 32, I think.
And then 2 nights ago against the Minnesota Timberwolves, and you win by 30 in a Game 5 closeout opportunity at home. And this is a series where we saw the Thunder lose by 40. This team, I think this is a perfect illustration of this team, and one of the biggest themes that makes them so successful is their ability to get to 0-0 and play the game in front of them. Yep. It could be very easy to let carryover from a 40-point loss influence your next game, influence the next 2 games, or just influence your mindset around a series. Like, gosh, this is going to be a tough one. Yep. But for Oklahoma City to come home, just get back to 0, lock in on the baseline that they want to play at. We want to come out and set a tone from the outset. We want to defend like crazy. We want to play with a lot of force, physicality, and we want to generate good looks, have a balanced offensive attack, and get out in transition. That is going to be successful for us regardless. What did the Thunder do in Game 5?
Championship level focus.
All of that.
Yep.
Championship level focus. On top of that, to add to your point, it could be very easy. Game 5 of the Western Conference Finals, and you were up 3-1 going into that
looking
game.
Out on the horizon.
You're like, ooh, yeah, the finals look real good, don't they? And start celebrating maybe a little bit early.
Yeah.
Like, we got this in the bag. We won Game 4. We're feeling good. We're in our home crowd. And maybe drift.
Yep.
Start to drift a little bit from that baseline that you want to get to. What we saw from Oklahoma City was them doubling down on that baseline. We saw no drift. We saw no lack of focus. It was laser sharp from the very first possession of that game. And it was so impressive because you have to remember, this is a team whose average age is 25 years old.
Yeah, not even 25 yet, which is amazing. There's only one team that's ever been younger to win an NBA title. So the Thunder would be, if they go on to win the title, would be the second youngest team to ever win a title. And a couple things to add to your point here. Between the regular season and the playoffs, the Thunder now has the most double-digit wins in a season in NBA history.
Yep.
So really remarkable there. The other thing about these blowouts, and you pointed to the rarity of them in the playoffs, they're actually critical to advancing, because as we see during the regular season, clutch time games, they're a bit of a crapshoot. Some teams you could argue are maybe better in the clutch than others.
Sure.
But for the most part, if teams are of the same ilk and of the same kind of caliber, those games go 50-50.
Yes. It's a coin flip.
Right.
Yeah.
And so you're leaving it up to chance. Most playoff series, they come down to the luck of the draw and whether the ball goes in or out for you in those clutch time moments. When you leave no doubt, you give yourself more margin for error.
Yep.
If those clutch time games don't go your way.
Yep.
That's, I think, what we saw in the Denver series more than anything is the Thunder didn't have a couple of those games go their way in the clutch, but they won 2 games in blowout fashion.
Yep.
To not even have to worry about that in those 2 games. And if half the games that you win, you don't have to worry about, well, then that allows you to go 2 for 4 in the clutch, 2 for 3 in the clutch time games that you did get into.
You just eliminate any potential variable not going in your direction, because what's the Thunder's mindset in every game? Control what you can control. And when it gets late in the game, you're playing a team who has made it to the Western Conference Finals. That's a really good basketball team.
Yep.
And they have a lot of really good, potent offensive players who are capable of just doing great things despite your best efforts. Yeah. Guys like Anthony Edwards, they're going to make shots over Lou Dort just because they're great players.
Yep.
And if you're leading by 20 at that point, you can let Anthony Edwards make a couple of those shots, and it's okay because you've built up such a nice cushion for yourself. So all of this to say, the Thunder has the most 30-point wins in a postseason in NBA playoff history, and still has at least 4 more games.
Four more opportunities to add to that, potentially.
Potentially. And I just find that so fun to think about. Yeah. Very cool to think about. Very impressive by this young team, just doing uncommon things left and right. All right, let's talk about a couple of themes that have jumped out to us over the course of this Western Conference Finals. And one that we've talked about, I think a little bit on the podcast before, is the fact that you look at this Thunder team now, and you look at this Thunder team when they first started this playoff series, this is a better team now than they were at the beginning. And I know some things that jump out in my mind, but I want to know from you what ways you feel like this team has grown from the start of the postseason to now.
Well, first of all, I think it's an amazing point that you're making, and we should probably just pause for a second to talk about that concept in general.
Sure.
Which is, a lot of times when teams get to the playoffs, they are viewed and sometimes view themselves as a finished product. This is who we are. This is the 9 or the 8 guys or the 7 guys that we're going to play. This is how we're going to play every night. This is, this is our upper limit. This is our lower limit. This is who we are as a team.
Yeah.
And the Thunder has never looked at themselves like that. And I think it's a very unique growth mindset that this team has, that they recognize, like, to actually be great, you have to be a better team at the end of your playoff journey than you were at the beginning of your playoff journey.
Yeah.
I think we've actually seen that. And there's been some circumstances that have actually forced the Thunder into maybe embracing that even more than they already would. One of them is that they weren't healthy for a good portion of the year.
Yep.
And so for so much of the season, they had to learn how to play different ways. And then towards the end of the year, the last month or two of the season and in the playoffs, they're still honing and refining some of these new ways of playing that they weren't able to try out with Chet and Isaiah Hartenstein together, and Chet and Jay Will together in a new configuration, and J-Dub more at the 4. How about some Kenrich Williams in different situations? Jay Will, coming in to play in the Denver series the way that he has. Yeah. So I think that it's been really fascinating to watch this team do exactly what you described, which is take strides forward in understanding themselves and what their capabilities are while still going out and playing the games and winning them.
Yes. And the fact that this group, let's hone in on the Denver series for a second, because I think that's a nice microcosm of what we're referring to. The Denver series threw a lot of different things at Oklahoma City that we hadn't really seen them go through a ton throughout the regular season. And a big thing that Denver did was play zone. Yes. Right? It was a lot of zone from Denver. And for Oklahoma City, from the start of that series to the end of that series, their ability to pick up information, apply it to the next game, pick up information, apply it to the next game. So by the time we get to game 7, Denver's like, zone might not be the best option here. I think they figured it out.
We've exhausted
that option. And so you take a team that took their fastball defensively going into game 1, which was, we got him.
Yep.
Zone. And then by game 7, they're like, we can't throw that pitch anymore. Yeah. Because the Thunder has picked that apart and now found ways to score. I think that's a nice microcosm of how the Thunder is. I want to use the word adaptability. They're so adaptable in this sense of like flowing, taking what the game gives them and learning, failing. Because the Thunder lost 3 games against the Denver Nuggets. Like the losses are also very valuable for Oklahoma City because that applies a little bit more information that they can take from the game. Then they get back to 0, and then they apply all of those lessons in the next game so that by the end of it, they're ready to rock and roll. And then you get to game 1 of Minnesota. Minnesota plays 1 possession of zone.
And it not for us. Yeah.
It didn't work. It didn't work at all.
I like your point there about failure, and it reminds me of something that Shea said at practice, weeks ago, which was he sort of made a list of the things that are important to him in life, and of course all of the things that you would think of, family and his teammates, and one of the things that he listed as he kind of went along was failure. And that is important to him. And he sort of explained the reasoning why, and that, that's the only way that you can grow. And for the MVP of the league to think that failure is actually an important quality for somebody to be able to handle and embrace and understand, it's so cool to see that. And then actually to witness it play out over the course of a grueling 7-game series, and then to come out of that series as a better team and go 4-1 in relatively short order against an excellent Minnesota team who would just, run roughshod over 2 excellent, Pacific Division teams in the Lakers and the Warriors.
Exactly. And this reminds me of something because throughout the regular season, we talk about how Oklahoma City has built up habits that they're relying on those habits right now. That's all that's showing up. The Thunder's not rolling out new material. They're not thinking of new ways to approach things. They're being adaptable, but that adaptability muscle was built throughout the regular season. And it reminds me of something of like, it was like a saying that I heard, like when you're going through school, it's like your job isn't to just learn the answers to the test, it's to learn how to learn.
Yeah.
And this group, and that requires a little bit of humility too, because
Right.
it requires you to sit there and say, I don't know this.
Yeah.
And I don't know what's happening here, but I know how to figure it out. And we've seen that throughout the course of this season for this group. And Coach Dagnall's done a fantastic job of creating an environment of unpredictability so that this group is very comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Yep.
And the playoffs can be very uncomfortable.
For sure. Yeah.
And just in terms of the highs feel really high and the lows feel really, really low. But this group has just been so steady throughout all of that, which is so incredibly impressive.
And, that adaptability is something that the team has practiced all season long.
Yeah.
We saw stretches of, the Thunder going really small and that being
Mm-hmm.
a tool that they could use down the line. In the span of, a week, basically, we saw Alex Caruso defending Nikola Jokic.
Yeah.
We saw him defending Anthony Edwards. There's a swing. There's a few swing players that the Thunder has between him and J-Dub and Shea to some degree and Chet to some degree that you can bump them up and down the rotation. We saw Cason Wallace defending Julius Randle. I mean, some of those guys, like the way that you can move them and shift them up and down the lineup in terms of matchups defensively, it creates all sorts of other opportunities for you on the other end of the floor.
Yep. And it also creates individually a guy like Kenrich Williams, who didn't really see the floor at all in the Denver series, is suddenly rolled into action against Minnesota and gives the Thunder a really nice lift off the bench in the minutes that he plays. And it's because of his, professionalism individually, but also being a part of a culture and environment that is just like, be ready whenever your name is called. And who knows when that might be, but when we call you, it's time to rock and roll, and we need you to show up. And this group, so comfortable with being uncomfortable. You mentioned Alex Caruso.
Yep.
Can we talk about him for a second?
Sure.
You didn't let us do a whole segment on him off the top.
I didn't think that we were going to go with the jersey number thing, but yeah, okay.
But I think he's worth mentioning in this moment because he did have 4 steals in Game 5. But the theme for Caruso throughout this postseason has just been like just disruption galore.
Yeah.
If you make a sloppy pass, Alex Caruso is probably going to get a hand on it. It doesn't matter if he starts on one player at the start of a possession. He might end up on a different player or having guarded 3 of the 5 players on the court in one possession. He's been so impressive throughout this postseason and also playing a lot more minutes than we saw throughout the regular season, but giving the Thunder some awesome possessions.
Yeah, in addition to the defense where, he's almost at 2 steals a game here in the playoffs. He's playing 23 minutes a game and he's shot 42% from 3.
Yeah.
He's been really the most reliable 3-point shooter on the Thunder night in and night out throughout the postseason. And that's one of the reasons why you go out and get him.
Yep.
Right? I mean, this is a guy that's been in this situation before. He's been a complimentary player on a championship team before. And the cool part about it is he's taken nothing off of the table from everybody else who's developing in their own ways in this team. And as Mark Daigneault says, it feels like he's been here for 3 years already.
Yeah.
And so, for him, he's not a finished product in the sense that he is still continuing to grow within the Thunder and learning how to play off of these guys and learning how to contribute to the growth and the success of the younger players around him.
Yeah.
But he's made, massive strides in that department, and, 16 playoff games in, he's had a tremendous impact.
Do you remember maybe 2 seasons ago, and OG podcast listeners will get this reference. Do you remember the Davis Bertans 3-point timer?
yeah.
I kind of want to rebrand that now for Alex Caruso for like a Caruso steals timer.
The steal deflection timer?
Yes. Because
cool.
in Game 5, it was 1 possession, and immediately he had a steal and was getting out in transition, shoveled it back to Shea, or I think it was Shea, and Shea laid it up in transition. It's just like he is instantly, as soon as he steps onto the court, doing something, whether that's knocking down a 3, whether that's getting a deflection or just getting a jump ball, diving on the floor for a loose ball, getting a steal. Just he influences winning in kind of every aspect of the game when he's out there. And it's really fun to watch. And I'll take that a step further. What's even more fun to watch is seeing how the crowd reacts when Alex Caruso checks into a game or does something, blue collar and gritty, and this crowd just loses their mind. They love it. They love to see it.
I I noticed that he's like in opponents' heads. You know, the play that stands out to me from Game 5 is all he's doing is sprinting back in transition defense.
Yes.
And Naz Reid gets spooked and just, dribbles the
Dribbles
ball off his foot.
Yeah.
And it's just like, he just glances and says, Alex Caruso's charging down on me. Like, I got to watch out. And he just loses focus for 1 second. And the ball goes off of his foot. And at the beginning of the year, I, kind of track important plays throughout the season. I go through every play-by-play. And for each guy, I have like a little header of like, here's sort of the type of play that, is especially for Shea. It's like Shea's magic, just like a magical Shea moment.
Yeah.
And one of the ones that I have for Caruso is Caruso in people's heads. And like that was a Caruso in people's heads moment.
Spooky Caruso.
And he's able to do that to teams and opposing offenses.
Yeah.
It reminds me of prior to coming to the Thunder, I was with the New York Jets. And the Jets had this amazing defense when I was there, and they won a playoff game against Tom Brady and the Patriots. And one of the things that the Jets would do at that time was, they blitzed so aggressively. And there was a possession or a play where Brady drops back to pass, and he's expecting 6 rushers coming at him. And he ducks down. And nobody's there.
Nobody's there.
But he had just experienced the pressure so much in that playoff game that he assumed his internal timer was going off of like, somebody's coming to get me right now. And he ended up, not being able to make it. He ended up kind of just going down, I think, right there, even though he may have had an opening. And I feel that way sometimes about this Thunder defense. Caruso, obviously, a massive catalyst in
100%.
that. But teams feeling like, oh no, it's about time for me to get rid of this ball right now because somebody's coming and going to come grab it from me.
It's what makes the Thunder's defense so good. Yes, the pressure. Yes, the intensity. Yes, the cohesion on that end of the floor and the elite defenders. But it's just the fact that they have teams seeing ghosts all the time. It feels like there's a 6th defender out there just in people's minds, making them make hurried rush decisions, whether it's a rush shot or a bad pass that just goes sailing out of bounds or dribbling the ball off one's foot out in transition for what should have been a easy-ish layup. That's what makes OKC's defense so potent, is they've got that extra defender out there, and it's just doubt.
Yes, yeah, exactly.
It's just, are you sure you want to do that? That might not be a good idea. All right, another guy I want to talk about, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, very deserving of his flowers. MVP ×2 now.
Yes, the Magic Johnson Trophy.
Magic Johnson Trophy that he hoisted at center court for his efforts in these Western Conference Finals. Very deserving for Shai because he's put up, obviously, incredible offensive numbers. And we should talk about that.
Yep.
Because it would be easy to overlook that, given the fact that he does it so consistently. But let's not take it for granted. What we are seeing is historic level offense from Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Offense married with great efficiency.
Yeah, nearly 30 points a game on 47% shooting from the field. And he hasn't shot it as well from the 3-point line in the playoffs as he did during the regular season, where he took a massive step up in terms of his 3-point percentage. He was almost 38% from 3 during the regular season. That is a massive boost to his game, and it's something that coming off of last year's playoffs, he recognized being able to knock down threes and take a good volume of them was going to be essential. He's taken 5 threes a game here in the playoffs, and just that willingness to do it, I think, has opened up his game and given him more opportunities to create in the middle of the floor. It's forced teams to keep him honest from behind the 3-point line, and he's made enough of them in clutch times. Think about Game 5 against Denver. Massive 3 late in that game. Yeah. He's made the ones that he's really needed to, and that alone is going to buoy you in a situation like the playoffs where you just need to be able to do enough you got to make enough shots late in these games. Sometimes it's not always about efficiency. It's, can you get the right ones to go in the basket at the right time?
Can you make the simple play and that gets you a good shot? And for Shai, the answer has been yes. What stands out to me is his mid-range and how efficient he's been in that area as well. And really just, the word that I keep going back to is surgical, because the way that he finds his spots, elevates, knocks it down, really doesn't matter who's guarding him either. The way he's able to kind of just be so shifty to create enough space to get the shot off. It's been a really, really nice tool in his toolkit to be able to get to those shots. And then you have him knocking down shots in the mid-range, and J-Dub also really good in the mid-range as well. And that unlocks a lot of options for Oklahoma City, because you think about, NBA defense, and the goal is to take away the paint, and the goal is to take away the 3-point, or take away the rim and take away the 3-point line. And that leaves you some options in the mid-range.
Yep.
And if you have two guys on your roster who are really efficient and really potent in that area, it gives you a little bit of an advantage.
And speaking of those two guys, Shea so far in the playoffs is, over 3-to-1 assist to turnover ratio. J-Dub more like 4-to-1 assist to turnover ratio. That is massive in the postseason for those two guys
Who have the ball in their hands a lot.
Have it a ton. And, to be able to play to that degree of efficiency in that regard, also massive. Sometimes we think of efficiency only in shooting, but it's, the playmaking as well for your teammates. And, those two guys, they have done an excellent job of also, creating points for their teammates. They're almost at 500 points created for their teammates in the playoffs in terms of points generated by assist.
To that point, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander in Game 5, first quarter, he assisted or scored on all but one basket for Oklahoma City.
Amazing.
All but one. Yeah. He was responsible for 24 of the Thunder's 26 first quarter points. And I believe the first five of the game, it was all him.
Yep.
All him.
4 assists in one bucket.
4 assists in one bucket.
Yep.
And that just goes to show the way he's influencing these games. I also want to flip to the defensive end of the floor for Shai, because he's also been doing what he's done during the regular season, which is pick up those steals, the breaking up entry passes to the post, all of the things that we've seen from him throughout the regular season, showing up big time here in the postseason. He had 2 steals in Game 5, 1 in Game 4, and then 6 total from Game 1 and 2. And so it's everything that we have seen defensively from Shai is still up to par, and maybe even a little more than what we've seen during the regular season.
And there's some of those invisible possessions that don't show up on a stat sheet, but teams, because he is one of the central hubs of the Thunder's offense, teams are going to try to get him into actions on the defensive end of the floor. They're going to try to make him switch out onto Anthony Edwards, for example. They're going to try to they want to make him work.
Yep.
And I think one of the best compliments that you can give in those situations is you almost don't even notice during the games that that's happening. A lot of times when teams are putting the opposing team's best offensive player into actions,
it's like a thing.
It's a whole ordeal. It becomes a narrative. It becomes like something that the rest of the team is having to orient itself around, trying to help out.
Right.
There were so many times where Shai just held up solidly on Edwards out on the perimeter, or got switched out to him. There was a possession in Game 5 where Shai's actually off ball guarding Edwards and denying the entry pass to him so well that Timberwolves just throw the ball into the first row.
Yeah.
And, to give that level of effort off the ball when you're matched up against that high level of an athlete in Anthony Edwards, while you also have so much responsibility on the offensive end, really impeccable stuff from Shai.
I mean, and it's not anything new, which is the best part about it, is like this guy recognizes that half of his time on the court is going to be spent on the defensive side. So he is very much locked in, bought in, and getting better consistently on that end of the floor as well. And so you got a guy like Shai locked in defensively. We talked about Alex Caruso, Lou Dort just doing fantastic work on Anthony Edwards throughout this series. And that is a very difficult task. Mind you, he's coming off an entire 7-game series where he was tasked with defending Jamal Murray.
Yeah.
And then a 4-game series of 4 games against the Grizzlies where it's John Morant. And it's just like Lou just keeps showing up every single game.
Yeah, secret all-star of these series has been Lou Dort, because the tone that he set on Edwards in Game 4 and in Game 5 was just dynamic in terms of the way that this Thunder team needed to win those games. Edwards couldn't catch the ball, beyond half court. They couldn't get him into stuff because Lou was just, in his pocket the whole time. And that wears a team down over the course of a series when they can't go to what they really want to go to. And then you look at some of the biggest games in these series. In Game 5 against Denver, we keep going back to that. Game 5 against Minnesota. It's Lou hitting massive 3-pointers in those games. He hit the 3 straight in the fourth quarter of Game 5 against Denver. And he hit, I think, all 4 of his threes after halftime of Game 5 against Minnesota, when the Timberwolves did chop that lead down, got it into a little bit more of a precarious position. I think 12 or 14 points or something like that.
They were making some noise, yeah.
But Lou, he was there once again, made some big time shots. And so, his fit alongside Shea and then J-Dub and Chet, who I know we're about to talk about right now.
Yeah.
That is becoming a really, really nice continued growth from this group that we talked about at the beginning of the podcast.
Yeah.
Of like this team continuing to find ways to get better and each of these players finding their opportunity to shine.
I have so many things to say about Lou Dort because it's his resilience after not scoring at all in the first quarter to knock down two of the biggest shots of the game just to keep Minnesota away and shut them down. And then the fact that we talked about how much the crowd loves Alex Caruso doing like dirty work plays. They're like a couple of niche things that this Thunder crowd really appreciates. And it's like the dirty work plays by guys like Alex Caruso and then fourth quarter threes from Lou Dort.
Yep.
This crowd goes bonkers. And it's not just like, a roar, a clap. They're all going, Lou! And it's Lou!
Yeah.
Awesome. And it's just those little niche things make this place really special throughout the playoffs. Okay. You mentioned Chet and J-Dub. Let's talk about them and Chet specifically because he had a pretty big game in game 5 against the Timberwolves. 22 points, 7 rebounds, 3 blocks from Chet. And that's off of a game where he had, I think, 3 or 4 in game 4. I can't remember off the top of my head, but these are, back-to-back games for Chet where he's been incredibly impactful. And also, I want to add, his ability to just be a vertical threat at the rim for lobs and things like that have proven to be really advantageous for Oklahoma City in unlocking some offense.
Yeah, he had 3 blocks in that game up in Minnesota in game 4. And then, he goes for 22 in game 5, 21.
21, that's right.
And so that's 43 points over games 4 and 5. And he did it on 9 of 14 shooting in game 3 and then 8 of 13. So just unbelievable efficiency, really precise shot making, and then decision making with the ball. I mean, he also hasn't turned the ball over a ton. And you think about a guy who's 7'1" who's putting the ball on the deck. Like you'd think that's prime territory for somebody to be turning the ball over a bunch, and that just hasn't been the story. Chet has not turned it over very much at all. Just won a game. Yeah. And for somebody that's got the ball in his hands quite a bit, that's very, very impressive for a guy who's effectively in still sort of second, maybe third year if you want to count that first year of being in the NBA.
And he also knocked down a couple of threes as well in game 5. I mean, the versatility we're seeing from Chet is incredible. And I can't remember if we talked about this I can't believe we talked about this in our last podcast or if I talked about this with Royce on the post-game show. Okay. Forgive me. We've done a lot of talking recently.
Yeah.
But this is a guy who missed a significant portion of the regular season. Yeah. And for part of that, simply couldn't walk, broke his hip. And for him to be playing at the level that he's playing at right now in the playoffs on the biggest stage is so impressive to me.
Yeah.
And it speaks to the mentality that he has as just this ironclad competitor who is really legitimately only focused on doing what is best for the team and getting better. Those are his main priorities.
Yep.
And it's so cool to see that he hasn't shown any signs of like being rusty or anything like that. He is still fearless out there on the floor, rising to moment of truths and things like that, blocking shots left and right, just doing Chet Holmgren things. And we talk about getting better for the team. Let's talk about Chet Holmgren getting better from the start of this postseason to where he is right now.
And, it's just amazing that the work that he put in to be able to get himself back right after the All-Star break, to even have a chance to build up that rhythm that he needed to build up as we got towards the playoffs.
Yeah.
And for him to have found a way to fit in with the team, Shea went on and on about this, that look, this is a guy who is capable of so much. And he's jumping onto a moving treadmill with this Thunder team that's on pace, that ended up winning 68 games.
Right.
Chet didn't take anything off the table.
No.
He just added. He was purely additive.
That's a great point.
And it takes a level of basketball genius to be able to get into a team setting and just impact winning without taking anything away from anybody when that train is already moving the way it was.
No ego.
Yeah.
And it's all like just everyone
just
win.
Yep.
And team.
Yep.
Team
Yep.
first.
Yep.
And that every single person on this roster has that mentality, which is why the Thunder's been able to be so adaptable.
Yep.
Because it'd be hard to, navigate to maybe doing small ball lineup if, you've got guys with egos who are like, well, where are my minutes? Where are my opportunities? But nobody has that. And Chet Holmgren's a great example of that. A guy who has just gone through so much throughout the course of his career so far, endured so much, but has been so impactful for this group and just contributed to winning at every turn. And guys like that, it's why this team at such a young age has been able to accomplish so much so quickly, because everyone's rowing in the right direction together, moving towards one common goal. And that goal is, spoiler, still on the horizon for Oklahoma City. One
right
thing
around the corner.
Right around the corner.
Yep.
We heard at center court, talking to Lisa Salters, we heard from Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, the job's not done. We still have more work to do. Coach Dagnall telling that Thunder crowd, look, rest up.
Yeah, we need you.
We need you on Thursday. So there's still work to be done for Oklahoma City. This is a step in the right direction. We heard from SGA. He said this is definitely proof that we're doing the right thing, but this is not the ultimate goal. So for Oklahoma City, next stop, NBA Finals against TBD.
Yep.
We're recording this right now on Friday, May 30th. So the Pacers and the Knicks are still currently competing in the Eastern Conference Finals. That game is going to a game 6 now in Indianapolis. So we will, by the time you listen to this, you might know who the Thunder is playing, but we don't know currently at the moment. So still up in the air. The Thunder still has about a week to, practice, recover, rest, get ready. But the Thunder will be playing game 1 of these NBA Finals on Thursday, June 5th.
Yeah, Eastern Conference Finals game 6 is on Saturday. If there needs to be a game 7, that will be on Sunday at Madison Square Garden. I would imagine that would be pretty highly anticipated and rated game. And the Thunder's going to get to watch those games.
Yeah.
And they're going to get to sleep in their own beds, and they're going to get ready to gear up for game 1, as you said, on Thursday, June 5th. And then game 2 will be Sunday, June 8th, before they have to head out to either Indianapolis or New York City. And all of the same things that happened for playoff games up to this point, Thunder up in the park, access to the arena 2 hours ahead of time, all of that remains. And whether you're going to the game or not, you're going to want to get down here for sure.
And the good news for the Thunder, all the work they did during the regular season, winning 68 games, being the number 1 team in the Western Conference, having the best record in the league, guess what? They get home court advantage
you earned it.
these NBA Finals. Games 1 and 2 going to be here in Paycom Center, as you mentioned. All the amazing things that you guys fell in love with during the playoffs in terms of all the fan experience, all that stuff still happening here in OKC during the NBA Finals. So let's get into what's brewing for Oklahoma City. We mentioned the next 2 games 1 and game 2 going to be Thursday and Sunday. Nick, you've been through an NBA Finals. This stretch right here, what happens? What's going on? Like, I know practice is probably going on, but it's such an event, right? Like, it's a big deal. It's the last 2 teams left playing in June. I imagine it's a big spectacle. What's going to happen?
Well, I would just say, this is the calm before the storm right now.
Okay.
So embrace, this weekend, enjoy this weekend in downtown Oklahoma City, because I would guess sometime early next week, the media city is going to start moving in right here near the arena. The NBA takes over the buildings, basically, in the finals. And so what we all may be used to in terms of our normal rhythms and flows, it starts to look quite a bit different in terms of what's going on in the bottom of the arena and pre-game, post-game media access. There'll be a media day actually for the NBA Finals that we'll all go to. There is going to be a swarm of media that comes in, not just from around the country, but from around the world to be here for these NBA Finals. So just be prepared for all of that, and understand that things might feel a little bit louder or noisier in terms of the distractions here coming up in the NBA Finals. But this is what the Thunder has trained itself for years now, which is to understand how to block out the external noise and how to maintain that level of focus that they need to.
Because spoiler alert, that court, still 94 feet.
Exactly. Yeah.
Rims, still 10 feet tall. Game's still going to be 48 minutes long. I can guarantee you.
48-minute game.
That's right.
Yep.
And it all comes down to winning 4 before your opponent does. And the Thunder, ready for that opportunity. They've done a great job up to this point. They have certainly reason to celebrate, but they know that they've still got work to do, and they most certainly will lean back on that habit, getting back to 0-0, so they can accomplish their ultimate goal. Against who knows?
We'll see. We'll find out.
We will find out soon. But that wraps up today's episode. Thank you so much for watching and listening. Be sure to like, rate, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you so much to our producer, Matt Bishop. And until next time, Thunder up and catch you later.